just point out some differences so people can see what's going on, and then probably when we get to Article 14, we're probably Bruce is going to talk maybe briefly about a letter we got from Dave Hessler. I think that the Hessler letter's around here somewhere. And also, did you make copies? Did you print out that thing I sent you? Remember that I sent you that said print out 8 pages of this?
Yes, put it there.
Okay.
Somewhere up there.
Right.
By Gerald.
There.
Yeah, right there.
Also, we were also asked about, non-web-based questions and answers. Now, these are not all the documents, but if you were going to go onto the web and look at the public comments page, there are a bunch of questions and answers from the planning board and commentary. So this is not all the documents that are below there, but this is actually just the grid of questions and answers, but there's more questions and answers below that. But at any rate, this is at least a partial collection of questions and answers in a hard copy form that people had talked about. So that's available over here. If you want to speak tonight, just ask that you grab one of these forms and fill it out just so we have a record of who spoke tonight, so we make sure we capture it all later. So I'm going to go ahead and let Bruce do his sound demo.
Okay, Mr. True asked for a repeat of a demonstration I did at a workshop a few weeks ago. And basically what I was doing was demonstrating how David Hessler had explained that trying to measure DBC levels is not actually practical in the real world for wind turbines, because the DBC readings are upset by the wind noise passing over the microphone, even at relatively low wind speeds. So I'm just going to repeat that, and for that, this is a sound meter. I did have it recalibrated about a month ago. And what we're going to do is, it's being set to measure DBC sound levels. And then if everyone would just be quiet for just a minute, we'll try to get a steady reading. I'm not sure how many people could see it, but it was settling around 46 dBc. And if you were looking actually at A, just so to give you a comparison, dBA in this room right now settled down around 34.7, 34.8. So even in this quiet room, the DBC level is over 10 decibels higher. You don't hear it, but that could be everything from people's breathing to the fan and that. You name it, there's a lot more of that sound you don't hear than you realize. Now, what David Hessler was explaining was that when there is any air movement over the windscreen, you're measuring the sound of that movement of air against the windscreen. You're not actually measuring background sound. So what I did at the other meeting was simply swipe this through the air. I'm going to do the same thing again. That actually, I did a little work at home, and that generates about only a 2 to 3 mile per hour speed across that windscreen. It's not really that high. What the meter will do is I will push a button here and it will record that maximum level. So if everyone is, sorry, hit the wrong button. .7. Now, this was just a repeat to demonstrate the principle of why DBC is inappropriate for use for measuring sound from wind turbines. It's next to impossible to actually get a valid reading. What I have also been playing with is larger windscreens at home and using a fan and actually a device that measures the wind speed going across it. I get similar results, but it takes a lot longer to demonstrate that. If people want that demonstration, I will do it at the next meeting, at our workshop, to demonstrate it there. But it takes a while to set up and it takes longer to do because I have to do a lot of fiddling to get the microphone at the right distance from the fan, measure the wind speed, change windscreens. So this was to demonstrate the principle. If people want to see something that's a lot more accurate, I'll do it at the next meeting. But I hope this shows you why DVC doesn't work in the real world. Sounds good, but it doesn't work.
Go ahead and talk.
The land use ordinance that we were discussing here tonight does use the DVC.
And based on Hessler's recommendation, we're going to talk over just dropping that. Because if you're, again, one of our problems with the court case was the fact that we had things in the ordinance that are either impossible or don't work. The whole point of redoing this ordinance is to eliminate those things, so that we no longer have a situation where we have impossible things that can't be measured. You're setting up an impossible situation.
So am I correct that we'd have another public meeting if that change is made?
What the process is going to be, this is going to be the last public hearing per se for changes. I think if we look at the schedule, that there's like next week is like the last week for the public to have input, because we've been taking public input ever since January every week, because we do have to button down, write it, and publish it. And then there'll be multiple public information sessions. Carol had asked for those, throughout the month of May, once we get it published on the desk, to further discuss it so people can see exactly what it is. We haven't discussed, we just got a letter from Hessler between meetings. Excuse me. It's published on the website, and there's copies of it at Town Hall. And we haven't had a chance to have a group discussion about Hessler's letter and what we plan to implement versus what we don't plan to implement. So I think some people have come by the town office to pick a copy of Hessler's letter up. So like tonight and next week, before we have a discussion, will be a good time to make sure that you review Hessler's letter and give your input and responses to what Dave Hessler said. One thing I will say is that the subsequent to us hiring Dave Hessler has done a lot of work for regulatory agencies. He's been involved with a lot of group research projects, all over the world, and and in particular the United States. And most recently, apparently last fall, he did a research project here in Maine for the DEP as a DEP contractor to study something. So apparently he is quite a, I guess he's quite well thought of in the regulatory community to do work. So I don't think that we should take what Dave Hessler says lightly.
One other comment on the demonstration. We've kind of established the background of 34 DBA, correct?
Yes, in this room, yes, we're going
Could I add a noise so that we could demonstrate that the 5 and 10 decibel increases represent the allowed limits at residences as well as properties?
turn it back on. Okay, it's doing DBA, and I'm going to set it for recording maximum just as soon as I'm quiet, because talking right here, it's at 60.
Should I go louder?
That's at about 39. Well, you hit 70 almost there.
I'm getting like 53.
Okay, I can't do max, I'm just gonna watch it. That's about 47.
So that would be,
Does it change different places in the room from where you are, like, say, to back here?
Yeah, it would.
I mean, if his reading, if John Eric's readings were taken back here, would it? Is that thing
Go
making
ahead,
noise?
can you make it set at a particular sound?
let's see what yours reads at.
I think it's the same app that you're using.
Well, I'm just making noise here, but I just want to make sure that you were
Okay,
at a
you're-
pretty high reading, so I want to make sure that his 34 is reading what you were.
Well, his was, he read at 47 and I read at 49 or 50 at the same time, so I took it next to it. So, okay, so I was trying to figure out where the horn was coming from. So it was basically from whatever sound, I don't know what sound you had over there, but he had, you know, in the high 40s, so it was like within a couple decibels.
Okay, so that would be, the first noise level that I used would have been allowable under the current ordinance, or current proposed ordinance. The second sound would have been very slightly more than what would be allowed on people's property beyond 4,000 feet. Is that accurate?
Right now, it's set at beyond 4,000 feet at 40 dB, so you were
Plus
actually
10.
louder.
Plus 10.
That's an alternate. We're still going over that. But yes, right now, that's the present.
That's like the daytime sound.
Day and night is the same now, my understanding?
Well, I made a mistake when I wrote the 7 PM to 7 AM down. It's supposed to be worked out. Hessler picked that up, and so did a couple other people. I think Paula picked that up too.
Right, the day and night limits are the same.
Is that where we're going, Bruce, with Hessler's new one? That's what I thought.
Yeah, pretty much we're going to be going with just day and night all the same. The lower limit is what sets it anyway, so there's no sense having a higher one at a different time.
Agree.
So you're going with the 40 instead of the 35? Is that what you're saying?
You need to read Hessler's.
I have,
We
yeah.
haven't settled on that yet because we haven't, as a group, been able to discuss his letter. And we're not allowed to discuss it outside of meetings.
30.
Go ahead, Jessica.
I just wanted to ask, if that was, you was reading DBA, correct, when Jared was making a noise?
Yes,
And was you just regular decibels, not DBA?
no, DBA.
I'll be honest with you, on this application, on this phone, I think it might be decibels, but I'm not positive it's decibels or dBA, to be honest with you.
I believe it's just decibels, because that's the app I have as well.
Okay.
The DBA is what was needed.
Right.
And the only other comment I had on your, what you mentioned there was, if not DVC, then is there going to be any low frequency, any way to assess low frequency or infrasound?
Effectively, there is no way to measure it properly, and at the distances you're looking at, it's not a concern. So why try to measure something that's,
By concern, you mean direct health risk? I noticed that in a lot of the papers that have been
health
posted.
or annoyance?
Okay. Well, I mentioned that because a lot of the papers that have been posted indicate that there's not a direct health risk. However, it could cause sleeplessness, which could cause health risk. So I just wanted to differentiate.
Sleeplessness is directly related to DBA levels.
You said at the distances we're looking at, what distances are those?
We're looking at regulating the sound outside of residences right now at 35 dBA. So it doesn't really matter what distances you're talking about. We're talking about outside of residences, which means inside the residence where your bedroom is, you're going to be looking at well, according to the WHO, you'd be looking at 20. I think a more accurate measure might be 25. It's insignificant.
Okay, I thought you were referring to, are you still thinking of a two-tier sound limit, cutting it off lower at 4,000 feet? Is that the distance you're talking about?
If you've read Hessler's letter, you notice that he recommends
I don't know what,
eliminating
I know
distance.
what Hessler said, I'm asking what you guys are doing, so we know how to compare the two.
Well, just like Bruce said, Paula, about 5 minutes ago, we haven't had a chance to have a group discussion about it. So we're not thinking anything right now.
No, well, you
We're
have
just-
something written, that's what I'm asking. What is in writing now, and what do you have to discuss in light of what Hessler has said? Would it be, what are you thinking of changing in light of what Hessler said?
You know what, Paula? I'm not going to answer that question until we sit down as a group and talk about it.
Oh, okay, so we have no way to ask an intelligible question if we have no idea what you are considering. Is my take on it right now.
What happened first, Paula, the chicken or the egg?
I'm sorry?
What happened first, the chicken or the egg?
Oh,
But I mean, that's what it is. I mean, we haven't had a chance to have a discussion. So therefore, we don't have a group thought about what we should do about it.
okay,
So-
so Hessler's letter came as a surprise to you.
Well, yeah, I didn't, obviously I didn't know when I was going to get it, and it just came like, what, Monday or something?
Today.
Or today? Well, I just got a copy of it yesterday. So yesterday was the first I read it. In fact, last night was the first I read it.
Okay.
So I've had a connection to Hessler's letter for less than 24 hours, and I haven't talked to anybody about it.
I guess we, who have attended the meetings all along, had assumed that Hessler was advising you all along, so.
No, he gave us some information in the fall, which we were working off of, and he's been traveling around doing stuff, and we've been researching and reading his papers, and so finally he got back a detailed response to us.
Okay, can I ask, I'm sorry, Jared, am I interrupting you?
No, thank you.
Can I ask which of the sensitive receptor definitions that you, or do you know at this point, which of the sensitive receptor definitions you're going with at this point?
Didn't you update that already?
Yeah, I updated that, but it's not posted yet. I mean, I updated it, but did Hessler redefine that in the letter? I forget whether that's in this letter or not. So we're using the new sensitive receptor definition that you came up with. I mean, I can bring it up and read it in a few minutes.
And if the other night you decided to go with 500 feet around a sensitive receptor rather than 100 feet, or is that out the window because
I
you're
don't know where you got that idea.
That's what did you vote 500 feet on?
Can I answer
Absolutely
that?
nothing.
The height of the towers.
Yes, the height of the
The
tower is
height of the tower
500
is
feet.
500 feet.
The what?
The new height standard will be 500 feet, because that's where the
Okay,
FAA
thank you.
starts to do
I
heavy
misheard.
regulation.
I'm sorry, misheard. So it's still 100 feet around a sensitive receptor will be one sound level, and that may be subject to change after your discussion. What that sound level is within 100 feet of the sensitive receptor as compared to beyond 100 feet.
That is correct. There will be two different levels.
And when we say sound limit, in your table of sound limits, that doesn't mean that the highest decibels that are ever experienced at that location are the 35 or 40 or 45, whatever you decide. That's LEQ. That's not LA max, right? Or even LA.
It's not LA max, no.
Hessler came up with another standard for this.
So it's not really a limit. The EQ, that's a limit on the EQ, but it's not a limit on how loud the sound can be in that location. At any moment in time, it can be considerably higher than the LEQ.
It's
Or the L90.
It's pretty much impossible to regulate something for L max.
No, I'm just saying, that's not the maximum that's ever going to be experienced there. It's not even the maximum that's going to be experienced there in any hour. the LEQ is not the maximum that's going to be experienced in whatever time period, whatever frame, whether you use 10-minute or an hour or whatever you choose for measuring. It's the average, highest average is the limit that you're setting, not the absolute maximum sound that's going to be heard.
It says here from Hessler, if any statistical definition is given to the project sound limit, it should be the L90A 10-minute measure. This quantity tends to filter out the contaminating noises mentioned above and given a somewhat fairer but still imperfect indication of the project sound level in situations like this one, where the signal project sound level to noise background sound level is going to be quite low. LEQ measured even over a 10-minute sampling period would make it erroneously appear that the project sound level was grossly higher than it actually was. So he's recommending L90A for 10 minutes, which is a 90% sound level.
Well, that's lower on, it's less, it's numerically less than an LEQ.